So this is another of the qualitative studies dealing with vulnerabilities that I did with a lot of colleagues. You can see everyone's name on there, and several of my colleagues are here in the room as well, so feel free to pull any of us to talk about our research. So you probably have noticed the increasing interest in mental health, not only in research, but also in policy. Earlier this year, you have probably seen the efforts by the European Commission in relation to mental health and their new comprehensive approach to addressing and mainstreaming mental health in European policies. So these efforts are introduced in relation to the so-called increasing mental health crisis, especially of younger generations who are increasingly experiencing more difficulties than we have previously seen in large numbers. For example, 1 in 5 young people are saying that they're feeling lonely most of the time. A lot of this is effect of the crisis related to COVID, which is when we were doing our research soon after that, and we saw the effects of that. But also we think there are other socioeconomic factors, for example, that are contributing and other factors contributing to the increase in mental health issues. The European Commission's efforts acknowledge the positive and the negative effects of the digital, which is good to see. Normally there's an extremely higher focus on the risks, but this the new efforts offer a kind of balanced approach, and they aim to address children and young people as a specific groups, and efforts are targeted, which is also a good thing to see. And the aim is for a safer and healthier digital space for children, which will then contribute to their well-being and mental health. So the Commission is also calling for a comprehensive approach, and it's very good for us to see that digital skills and training are included in there as a way of increasing opportunities and adaptability of the younger generations and long-term efforts to contribute to their well-being. So I think a lot of our findings speak to these efforts, which when we were doing the research were not there. So I think it's good to see how they coincide with the new efforts that we see across Europe. So when we were doing the research, we were interested in the different dimensions of digital skills. Do they make any difference to the mental health outcomes of young people? Does it matter what kind of skills they have? We were also interested whether digital skills contribute to the improvement of their mental health, or they're actually detrimental, they're worsening their condition. And we also wanted to know what recommendations to make in terms of policies. So we spoke to 62 young people aged between 12 and 22 in Norway and the UK, and they had different experiences of internet-related trauma, things like cyberbullying or excessive internet use, of online sexual abuse, access to self-harm communities and materials online, and so on. And they had ranging levels of mental health difficulty. Some of them are in care, some of them had really mild experiences in relation to problems online. So I want to focus on the findings a little bit. One key aspect of what we found for us was that digital skills can both support and aid mental health, but also can worsen mental health for the youth that we spoke to. So we saw that young people were gradually developing the skills. I think this is something that was coming through the survey findings as well. As children grow older, they get more and more digital skills. When we're talking to the young people, they were reflecting on how they've learned things. They learn things by doing, and they gradually develop the skills that they need. But overall, we found that the young people that we spoke to were highly competent in relation to the digital environment. They were not young people who didn't know what they were doing online. That's why they were ending into trouble and having problems. If anything, they were on the highly skilled spectrum. We also saw that you saw the different dimensions, the 4 dimensions of digital skills. They were all important for the young people that we spoke to, but we also saw that they were developing specific digital skills in relation to their experiences, in relation to their mental health troubles. And I'll give you an example. Some of them were trying to clean their feeds from negative content. They were trying to trick the algorithms to suggest positive things to them. They were trying to figure out who they can trust online. and who they can find support from, what kind of groups they can join, how they can better support others. So these were things that were specifically related to their condition, to their experiences, which I think shows very well that we need diverse approaches that acknowledge what children themselves are going through. However, we also noticed that the sophisticated digital skills don't necessarily make for better mental health and well-being outcomes, and young people sometimes could not use the digital skills in the situations. They, for example, sometimes couldn't recognize the risk, or things were developing gradually, and the situation was getting worse gradually for them. So they couldn't always utilize the skills that they had or they needed in specific situations. So sometimes the risk was increasing for them. And the two quotes here, I don't know whether they're too far to read. So the first one says that on Twitter sometimes there are feeds trending and threads trending, and my feed where she finds things to cope. And this girl, who was 17, had found a way to bookmark the positive things, and when she needs them, she has them at their hand. So it's a kind of positive use of her skills. The other second example talks about the affordances of different platforms, and how if something is taken down on Twitter, it was in relation to risky content. The young people would find a way around, and they will share links, for example, from Dropbox, in order to disseminate content that sometimes the platforms might not agree to share. So they were very sophisticated in knowing how to bypass the specific affordances. They were working across different platforms to get out the information that they wanted to get out. And sometimes it was extreme content that they were talking about, for example, in relation to self-harm or eating disorders. But they were very skilled. They knew how to do it, and they knew how to hide in a plain sight from adults where adult input was not welcome. The second big point that I want to make today is that skills may be insufficient on their own to support young people. So they need to be part of bigger and more comprehensive measures. And the reason for that is that young people were learning digital skills while they were learning other things about themselves, about the environment, about what it is to be a young person nowadays. So their skills were intertwined with other psychosocial life skills that they were learning. And this learning was taking place in a period of their time where they want to improvise, they want to try out different things, they want to challenge themselves, they want to put themselves in a slightly risky situation to see what happens. They want to see different opportunities, and they want to learn by doing. So as part of this, sometimes they encounter risk, but they also develop the skills to deal with this. They develop the resilience to deal with these situations. We also saw that algorithms actually can amplify their triggers for vulnerability because they were sometimes throwing up risky materials at young people. Mental health for them was something that was quite dynamic, so if they feel better on certain days, they might engage with more risky content, but then on days when they feel more vulnerable, the internet will continue to throw this material back at them because it's based on the history of what they were doing online, and it was not acknowledging this dynamic of their mental health. And sometimes the material was increasingly becoming riskier, and it was taking them down a rabbit hole of ever more increasing or more extreme material that they were facing online. So these challenges were actually testing the skills of young people, and sometimes they could not predict, or they could not stop these algorithms from working. Or if something, for example, was trending, it wasn't to do with their personal online behavior, but something that other people were engaging with online. They would still, even though they had the skills, they would still end up in these vulnerable situations. Recognizing their own triggers was something that we found was particularly important for the young people online. I would say that this is a digital skill in itself, being able to monitor how their engagement affects them and when they need to either move away or engage differently with the digital world. So it's something that combines the self-knowledge, but also a very good understanding of the digital ecology, and young people were really trying to grapple with this skill, but it was something that was hard to do. Here the quotes, the first one shows about this algorithm changing. It was a young woman from the UK who was interested in baking, and gradually the algorithm brought to her information about eating disorders or dieting, severe dieting examples. And she's saying here that she was she was 12 and looking at images of people who would eat just a strawberry for brunch and comparing herself and her own eating habits. And this is something that she said changed overnight, and the algorithm started suggesting this. She wasn't aware of how exactly she ended up in this place. And the other quote says that once you see the extreme content, you can't really unsee it. It's very difficult for young people to then distance themselves from this. So we didn't end with the findings. I don't get many projects where you actually have the time to do something more after you know what your findings are. But on this project, we were, I think, lucky is the right word to be able to do more with this. So we took the findings back to young people and we asked them to work with us to formulate their messages from the findings. They were quite critical of us. I'll tell you a little bit more. But also, as a whole project, we looked at the child rights implications of all the findings. You're going to hear more about child rights towards the later today, so I'm not going to talk about this, but I'll tell you a little bit about the deliberative workshops. We spent weeks and months, maybe even, drafting very carefully, crafting our findings, and young people still pulled them apart. As you can see, they were sitting and crossing out and saying, that's not how you talk about us, that's not the message we want to get out there. So it was a great experience of positive criticism. We also asked them to identify the stakeholders that they want their message to be taken to. They were very keen to come to Brussels for the final conference. I'm sorry we couldn't take them today, but I'm happy to show some of their messages on their behalf today. And we asked them also to develop the actual resources. And it was an extremely helpful exercise. The creativity and the critical thinking that they showed was really excellent. So we use this information from them and work with them to create these findings for young people, by young people, a resource that I want to take our ySKILLS communication team, and especially Rita Baptista, who is here in the room. Thank you, Rita. She did these amazing resources with us, and you can see the full resource here on this link. And we did a resource for mental health practitioners because young people was increasingly saying how difficult it is to talk to adults, and practitioners included, and it's difficult to handle or talk about their digital experiences. So we used their advice of how they want to be approached this topic to develop this guidance for mental health practitioners, which will hope then create a better dialogue around mental health. And this was translated, both the youth and the mental health professional resources, in many languages, as you can see here, and you can visit the resources on that website. So thank you to everyone. We did come together as a team to be able to produce this in as many languages as possible. So thanks to my colleagues as well. And just to wrap up some conclusions and recommendations that we have from our part of the work. We found that digital skills can support young people to improve their positive outcomes, but they also should not be seen as a silver bullet. They need to be seen as part of a comprehensive measure. So it's great to see that the European Commission is thinking along the same lines, but I think we need more specific and targeted initiatives that acknowledge different vulnerabilities and different groups and have a better understanding of how these vulnerabilities arise and what are the long-term effects from them, which I think our project as a whole speaks to very well. We think that teaching should cover all types of digital skills. The four dimensions that we've been talking today, normally we tend to see more about technical training and e-safety messages, but as you saw, there are other aspects, for example, the information skills, which are so important for young people, for example, to be able to evaluate the online information. And we need more support of that. So it should be a balanced approach of having the functional and the critical aspects that are crucial for young people. We think that industry and tech companies should design with young people and their specific needs in mind. As I said, they're so vocal about their experiences. They want to be approached. They want to work with others to improve the experiences of other young people. The young people that we spoke to felt like almost like missionaries, that they wanted to make things better for their peers. So I think we need to use this creative and positive energy. Government should consider the regulation to limit especially the excessive risks that are posed to young people by the commercial environment. We think without regulation, the efforts will be almost meaningless. And young people need to be consulted. What are their needs and what are their preferences? They can always surprise us with how different their views about what can make things better for them actually are. And we were thinking in work, well, we say work package 7, that's not meaningful to anyone outside the work process, but it was the sort of final stage when we're thinking about child rights. And we realized that in relation to mental health and well-being, we need to rely on policy and design that enhances the positive experience, enhances the life satisfaction, enhances the well-being. And this can be done with various techniques, for example, promoting a balanced lifestyle, emotional regulation, supportive social connections online, or even providing materials for young people. So I think as a whole, our project really shows how we need to acknowledge the vulnerabilities and the differences in the specific situations of young people. And you can follow for more recommendations online. And with this, I'm going to pass on to my colleague, Mariya Stoilova, who is going to talk about the experiences of refugee youth across several countries.